This edition of MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to keep you up on all the latest from MacVoices. Watch or listen to MacVoices straight from your email client. Sign up at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay up to date. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have Mr. Jeff Carlson back again. He's been a busy boy updating his Take Control books and adding new useful information to them. This time, we're going to talk about his Take Control of Lightroom CC. Jeff, it's great to see you. Thanks once again for being here.
I'm so glad to be back here so soon.
Yeah, it's always good. Well, you keep churning out these Take Control books. We'll have you back every day.
It's good to be busy.
So when last we talked about Lightroom CC, I think there was quite a bit of confusion going on, naming conventions and what versions were available for what. And I'm anxious to find out, has that been resolved, and how did that affect the creation or the update of this book?
I don't think it's been resolved. I think it's a very good question. I think that there's still some confusion because Adobe is basically using the name for its new software that it used for its old software, and I'm not sure how much background to go into, but basically Lightroom CC is the brand new version of Lightroom that's very cloud focused, and then Lightroom Classic CC is the Lightroom that people have been using for years, that is sort of more they say desktop based. And I think it hasn't been that long since Lightroom CC has been introduced, and so there hasn't been a whole lot of I want to say marketing message, sort of. Basically, I think what's going on is, in terms of user confusion, is what is Adobe doing in terms of they have this new program, Lightroom CC, and it does a whole lot of the Lightroom stuff that you would expect. And I think for people who are new to Lightroom, they see this, and there are definite advantages that we can talk about. For people who have been using Lightroom for a long time, I think they're in that sort of middle ground of early dread that says, oh, all right, they called it Lightroom Classic. Does that mean they're killing it? Is it, not long for the world? Is it no longer going to be updated? Do I have to shift everything over to Lightroom CC? I don't know if I want everything in the cloud. And so I say this with all due respect. I know people at Adobe, and they work very hard, but I think Adobe could have done a much better job of communicating how this rolled out, because I think, honestly, I think we're going to see confusion, easily through the end of the year when one presumes they announce updates, as they typically do at their Adobe Max, which is October, November. So, yeah, I think there's some confusion if you don't already know what's going on.
And I realize what this sounds like. This sounds like I'm really pushing the book, but I do think it's important to have.
I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that. Good. Yeah.
Sorry.
I think that you need somebody that is paying attention to some of this. I think that's part of an author's job, is to take some of this confusion about anything and kind of whittle it down, focus it, and cut through all the stuff and make it understandable. And certainly this particular situation does seem like it could benefit from that, because Lightroom is a great program. I think in any of the iterations, it just depends on what your needs are. But when it gets this confusing, I think there's a tendency for some people to throw their hands up and say, yeah, I'll go back and use Apple's Photos. It's free.
Yeah. And You're right. Like in terms of the quality of the software itself, it's actually great on several different fronts. I mean, on one hand, Lightroom CC, it has this different focus, this this sort of cloud focus, so that your photos can be available on whatever device you want, iPhone, tablet, computer, other computers. Like there are those advantages. But Lightroom Classic CC, in fact, has not been abandoned. Adobe made a point of reinforcing at the outset that they still have two separate development teams. Both versions are being actively developed, and in fact, just in the last I want to say month and a half, Adobe released an update to Lightroom Classic that goes a long way toward addressing a lot of the performance and speed issues that photographers have had for a long time. Just, like Lightroom is great, but it's kind of pokey, it's kind of slow. And the latest version is much better. Even if you have, no interest in Lightroom CC, you're still getting benefits on the classic side. So,
okay. I mean, that's
Yeah.
good, because I think those are the kind of things people need to hear to make sure they understand and know. And I know we talked about this before, but just as a little bit of a restatement. So what are the key differences between the various kinds of Lightroom?
Yeah, there's flavors, sort of.
Yeah.
So Lightroom Classic, Lightroom Classic CC, or I could be really pedantic. The actual name is Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic CC, which makes your head explode. So anyway, Lightroom Classic. That is the software that's been evolving over 10 years, and it sort of has everything. It lets you import your photos, manage your library, do organizational things like keywording and rating and all of that. It has a broad array of editing features. It's basically using a lot of the underlying technology that Photoshop uses to process raw files. And so you have a lot of very sophisticated, very well done tools for editing your photos and making them look the best they can. But then it also has things like there's a whole map module for applying GPS data to your photos, and there's a print module for doing more than just sort of printing to a local printer or making snapshots. You can print large inkjet, beautiful reproductions of your photos. There's also a web portion that lets you build websites or build photo galleries, and there's also a book portion, so you can build photo books, things that wedding photographers would use, where you put together all the photos, and that has the layout and everything, and then you take that and create a finished book. So Lightroom Classic sort of does everything, and it has some online component, so you can upload things to Creative Cloud and make photos available to your different devices, but in a more limited fashion. So that's Lightroom Classic. Lightroom CC was built with sort of two things in mind. One, fully cloud native, which means everything you import into it is uploaded to Creative Cloud at full resolution, your original files. So that gives you like an offline backup, but it also means that when it's synchronized to Lightroom on your iPad, for example, like you're working with the original pixels that your camera took. Lightroom Classic, when it uploads things, it actually uploads like a lower resolution version. So that's sort of the cloud component of it. But then Lightroom CC, they had the opportunity to basically let's rebuild Lightroom using modern technologies. Again, I'm not a developer, but it's fast. It's faster than Lightroom Classic in, I would say, almost all respects. And I think some of that is because it doesn't have 10 years of legacy code behind it. Now, as a result, Lightroom CC it's a 1.0, well now 1.2, I think, 1.2 program. And so it doesn't have a print module, doesn't have a web module. There's some mapping capability, but it's very limited compared to what Lightroom Classic can do. So, it's sort of the streamlined core experience of using Lightroom that they can build upon.
Am I making this up, or do I remember that Lightroom CC has some machine learning capabilities as well?
You're not making that up. Good memory. It does. So, in fact, the machine learning that's built into it, it's a technology that Adobe calls Adobe Sensei, that they're sort of slowly working into a lot of the products. And what that does sort of has two parts. One part, it helps identify things in your photos. So if you want to find pictures of mountains, you type in mountain, and even if you had never tagged or labeled anything, it can go through and say, that looks like a mountain, that looks like a mountain, that looks like a mountain, and give you all of those results. And so it's using that recognition of scenes and seasons and objects that the computer is completely doing on its own. Oddly enough, it doesn't yet have people or facial recognition built in, but I would imagine that that's on the roadmap. And then the other part of that, which is something that was released since we first talked about Lightroom CC, is the auto editing function. So for a long time, Lightroom has had like an auto button for its light controls. You click auto, and it basically sets everything according to how it thinks the photo should look. If it's really bright, it'll bring down the exposure, maybe increase the saturation of colors, that sort of thing. And those were all built on, various editing algorithms that have been developed over the years. And sometimes it would do a good job, and sometimes you'd be like, "This is terrible." I found that Lightroom's auto button would often like overexpose photos. So maybe you'd get some good detail in one area, but overall it'd be too bright. So then I would bring the exposure down. So Adobe said, well, hey, we have all this machine learning going on. Why don't we apply that to the auto button? So now, for us using the program, there's no sort of difference. Like you click auto, but the results are a lot better. And the reason for that is they're using the machine learning to identify what kind of photo you have. So again, like let's say you have a sunset with mountains in the background. And it knows up in Creative Cloud and Adobe servers, how other people have edited sunsets with mountains in them. And so it like synthesizes all that information and then comes back with a set of settings and, exposure and color and contrast and all that to apply to your photo. It's all very computational, and I don't know exactly how it's doing this, but in most cases that I've seen, the results have been quite good. Especially like bringing up shadow detail and things like that. There have literally been a few pictures where, before I would click auto and I'd be like, oh, that's a good start, and then work on it. And instead I do it in this version and I'm like, that looks good, or that looks even a little bit better than I probably would have done, and just leave it at that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's getting very exciting to see some of this machine learning actually come down to the user level, and this sounds like a perfect example of that. I'm waiting for some other programs to take advantage of it again at our level. There are plenty of things in an IT department that can make sense, but it's getting there fast.
Although actually, this brings up something that you asked when we were the last time we talked about this, because you were wondering about, So again, Lightroom CC, everything you import into it gets uploaded to Creative Cloud, and they do that so that that's your sort of central repository. And you were wondering, well, what are they doing with all that information? What's what are the privacy implications and all that? At the time, I didn't have an answer for you, but I specifically went looking for this for you.
Well, thank you, because I'm paranoid. Yeah.
So basically, part of the way that they can do this auto feature and the machine learning and identifying objects in the scene is they are scanning every photo that every Lightroom CC user uploads and using that as sort of the basis for the machine learning to happen. So everything you upload is sort of part of the experiment, part of feeding into all that data. Now, that doesn't mean that they are going to be like, Chuck's photo is this one, and we're going to take it and use it somewhere else or steal it. It's basically just sort of all, grist for the mill. And so, just by participating, it's making the machine learning, making the Sensei smarter. And I think that's probably partly why they didn't introduce the auto feature at the beginning, because I would imagine they got a big sort of boost of extra data that they could use to help implement that. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that, there is a way, and I listed in the book, there's basically a page on Adobe's website that will let you opt out from having your photos scanned, or scanned's not the right word, but basically used for these machine learning purposes. So things are still getting uploaded, and so there's still that level of comfort of, do you trust a company having your images? And for some people, they'll be like, no, I do not. And so, maybe then, this isn't the program from you, or this isn't the approach. But at least there is a mechanism to say, I don't want my pictures used, for this sort of data gathering effort. So it's something.
Yeah, and we have to be fair about this. I mean, you could ask the same question. The answers might be a little different of Apple, of Google, of Yahoo, of Shutterfly. I mean, I know that even the local drugstores, if you upload your photo, it's interesting. Even the local drugstores are saying, "Oh yeah, store all your photos here and then print them when you want." Store them where?
Yeah.
You guys are not privacy experts. You're not even tech experts. You're a drugstore. So, you really have to think about some of this. And if you're taking a picture of your shoe, okay, big deal. But you're taking a picture of your kid, or something even more sensitive, you got to really think about some of this. And again, I'm not saying don't do it. I guess I'm just saying think about it and be just a little aware of it.
Definitely.
You're seeing, and apparently you're seeing some amazing trade-offs here with the auto button and with the machine learning benefits that Lightroom is giving you. And so, yeah, take advantages of those if it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also there's I think some of this is rooted in the idea of making it personal. Like I don't want my family pictures to be there because somebody at this company might use them in some way that I do not approve of. Or I'm a professional photographer and I just, went and spent a lot of money and a lot of time to get these amazing nature landscape shots. And I don't want Adobe to just be taking my work, and like that sort of that personal gut level reaction. I think the reality is, Adobe doesn't care about your pictures. Adobe doesn't really care what's in your pictures because your pictures are, just something to be fed into the great machine learning maw, Yeah. And so, it's great that your pictures are there. But Adobe doesn't care what's actually in them. It cares that it can identify things such as trees and rocks and sunsets and landmarks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to sound like I'm completely, giving them a pass. But there are trade-offs, and there's a way to say, I don't want to do this. And if none of it is comfortable, then, you don't have to use it, or you can use Lightroom Classic and never upload anything, or, there are options.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you completely. You have to hit your comfort level. And for most people, this probably isn't even an issue. It just seems like security and privacy are such buzzwords right now that you have to talk about them when you talk about uploading anything or sharing anything, especially on the internet, where it theoretically can fall into the hands of folks who don't share. I mean, Adobe is a reputable company, no question about it. And I would not have any qualms about them taking my photo and using it, to advertise baking soda or something. But, there are other folks that, might very well do that.
Yeah. And, and actually I would push back a little bit and say like if they wanted to use your photo for something like that, like in an ad or something like that, then that would be the case where they would need to come to you and get permission and pay you for it. But I don't believe, and again, here's the, I am not a lawyer, hat, but, I don't believe there's anything in the terms that would allow them to do that. It's all, like the terms that you agree to, I believe are basically, you grant us the right to be able to store your image and, use it, but not in the sense of, we're going to pluck somebody's vacation photo out and turn that into a nationwide campaign on billboards and magazines and all of that. And I can also say that from personal experience interacting with people at Adobe, like they all know that, the people that I've worked with at Adobe, a lot of them are photographers and artists, and, they go out of their way to make sure that, credit is given and things are properly licensed and, all that sort of above board stuff that they should do because, they're hardworking people who want to do, creative stuff and help people who are creative.
Yeah.
So,
and they do an amazing job with so many things. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. So what else do we have in this book, Jeff, that because I know I think we've talked about it sort of being a tune-up to the book. It's not a full revision, but it's an update. And I got to give you a lot of credit, as I do all the Take Control authors, trying to keep these books up to date, because there are a few things that are more frustrating than picking up a book and finding that it's not up to date with the current material, current software. Yeah. And so you have to think, okay, well, I think this is what he meant over here when I'm applying it to the new version. And it makes you crazy. Yeah.
Well, see, here's the fun thing, and I'm saying that extremely sarcastically, the fun thing about writing books, it's almost axiomatic. When you ship your book, something will change that makes your book slightly out of date, or, like the company will add something, and that's exactly what happened here. We shipped the first. We published the first version of the book. Gosh, it's been months ago, so I have no memory of it. But basically, as close to the release as possible. I think it was within a few weeks of the release. Joe and Morgan and everybody at Take Control did a lot of work for us to do that, and that's great. And then I want to say within 5 weeks or so, Adobe released Lightroom CC version 1.1 that actually added brand new features. And I was just like, no. So for example, and a couple of them were significant features. So the new version of Lightroom CC and now the book talks about this new tone curve tool. And what that is so there are in a lot of software, there are two ways of adjusting things like exposure and shadows and highlights. And one is by using specific sliders for those, and another is to use a tone curve. Can't even say it, which is basically like a representation of how the tones and how the colors appear throughout the image. And by changing the angle of the curve, you can increase your exposure or decrease your shadows or make your blacks richer. Those sorts of edits. And so that was something that was not ready in time to ship with the first version of the software, and that they released in the 1.1 update. Some people just they learned how to adjust using curves, and that's what they're comfortable doing. Other people are fine like using sliders and then doing little touch-ups with curves. So that tool is there. There's also a new split toning feature, which is actually quite well done, the implementation in Lightroom CC. And what that does is that lets you assign colors to highlights and shadows. So it's more of an artistic tool, but for example, let's say you have a forest and a waterfall scene. Rather than having your highlights just be variations on white, maybe you want them to be like slightly purple or slightly blue, and maybe you want your shadows to be like a little bit warmer with a red tinge. You can do that like in extremes where it's like really colorful, or you can do it just a little bit in order to sort of bring out some of the green of the trees, for example. And this is a control that lets you just work on the color of the highlights and shadows. So that's pretty cool. And then there are smaller things like finally, if you push the F key, you can view your image full screen. Before you couldn't sort of preview that in like just the image. Excuse me, that's nice. And then they also reworked a little bit how they reworked the interface for how you store images on external drives, which is actually, I think, one of the coolest features of Lightroom CC. But I had to sort of rejigger that because they changed some of the options. I saw you like crinkle your eyes like, wait, storing photos on an external hard drive is a cool feature?
Well, did I miss it? Isn't CC supposed to be everything in the cloud?
Ah, yes.
So that's why.
Sort of.
Yeah, that's why I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, see, again, going back to Adobe's marketing, I think, yes, it does store everything in the cloud, but not to the extent where, not to the, I can't think of the word. Basically, it's not storing anything locally, because when you import something, everything has to be stored locally and then it gets uploaded. Partially because none of us have like super mega bandwidth that can just send a few gigabytes up to the cloud in a few seconds. I really wish, but we do not. And so you have to do something with those files. Now, what Lightroom CC does is it's actually a very cool thing. Let's say you're on a MacBook Pro with a built-in SSD that doesn't have a huge amount of storage. Like you have a 512 gig SSD storage. If you're a photographer, you can fill that up really quickly. So what happens? What Lightroom will do is it'll upload everything to the cloud. So everything is there in Creative Cloud, and you have a certain amount of storage, and you can buy more levels of storage to increase that. But for your local storage, you can say, okay, I want to make sure that my Lightroom library only takes up 20% of my free storage. I don't want Lightroom to just overwhelm and take over everything. And so what it will do is it will just, in the background, it will delete those files from your hard drive so they're not taking up storage. Now, it's not removing them from your library. You still have a little thumbnail. And when you go to open that thumbnail, if the file is not on your hard drive, then it will pull the original down from the cloud, and then you just edit it as usual. But it's not trying to store everything locally and then running out of space and making you have to, deal with, oh geez, now what do I do? Okay,
got it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That makes a little more sense. Just the way you said it the first time, it's like, okay, I thought I was missing something, Jeff.
No. Okay. So that's actually sort of part one. Now, part two is the extra cool part that I had to sort of go into more detail here in this edition, and that is, okay, let's say you're not comfortable having your originals only in the cloud. Again, we're talking about how much you trust Adobe and all of that. Well, I do trust Adobe, but I don't really trust anybody enough to have that be my only location for all of my originals. So what you can do in Lightroom CC is you specify an alternate location for your originals. So let's say you have a big hard drive attached to your computer, and you can say, store a copy of all my originals there because I want a local copy. So that's great because then you have the cloud version, and then you have the local copy, and that gives you two backups basically. And it also means that when you are working on your computer at home, you don't have to wait for anything to download. It just grabs it from that external hard drive. Okay. Now, imagine that you have your laptop and you go on vacation for like a long weekend. You're not going to take that big hard drive because the whole point of having it at home as an external drive is for it to stay there. We don't carry around external hard drives with our laptops because that sort of goes against the point. Excuse me. So what happens is you go and you shoot a bunch of pictures, you import them into Lightroom CC, and Lightroom CC uploads them to the cloud, but then it just holds on to those on your hard drive. Now, in Lightroom Classic, what you'd have to do is, let's say you go home and you connect to your hard drive. So now you have your library in two different places. You have all of your existing photos in your library on that external hard drive, and then you have a whole bunch of your brand new pictures on your laptop hard drive. And so in Lightroom Classic, what you have to do is you have to manually, inside Lightroom, move those over to free up space on your laptop hard drive and sort of bring everything together. It's not onerous, but it's like another step. So if you haven't fallen asleep yet, what's cool about the way Lightroom CC does it is, like, it recognizes all of that. And so as soon as you connect that hard drive and you launch Lightroom CC checks and says, okay, the hard drive is connected. Well, then I'm just going to move everything from the laptop hard drive to the external hard drive because you, the user, said you want to store all your originals on this external drive. And so it just automatically happens. So what's nice is you don't have to really worry about where your files are ever, because you've already set up this structure in place that says, yes, I'm going to upload my files to Creative Cloud, and I'm going to have this copy on an external drive at home that will also store all my originals. And whether I import into Lightroom with the disk connected or not, I don't have to worry about moving them or making sure my library is together, or having, more recent files stored in a folder on my laptop and then forgetting to move them over. Like, all that just sort of goes away, because you know that Lightroom CC will be like, oh, hey, we're connected to that hard drive now. Let's move everything where it needs to go, and that's it. And it just happens in the background.
Okay, so I got it, and I don't know how else it would do it, but I'll ask anyway. So when I plug in that laptop and my files go up to Creative Cloud and then they come back down to the external drive?
No, sorry. The images go up to Creative Cloud because that's where Lightroom sort of sees as the home location for everything.
Right.
And then when you plug into the external hard drives, so we have the sort of up and down things are going up to the cloud. And then when you connect to the external hard drive, that's sort of sideways. So the files are going from the laptop to the external hard drive.
Oh, okay. I see.
So the laptop's drive to the external hard drive. Okay.
So we have a copy of Lightroom on the laptop, and that's what we're working with. And that's what I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm biasing myself based on the way I have things set up. So that makes perfect sense. And so it just is smart enough to know that it's supposed to send them to Creative Cloud, but it's supposed to send them to the hard drive. If the hard drive is not plugged in, that's not a problem. It just waits until it does get plugged in and then copies them over.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the key point is you don't have to do it. So the way, like in Lightroom Classic, the way that I would need to work is, because my photo library is like around 2 terabytes. And so there's no, I love you, Apple, but I'm not going to buy a 2 terabyte SSD for my MacBook Pro because it's a lot of money. And so what I would have to do before is I would go like on a photo workshop and import things into my laptop. And they would get stored, in the directory that Lightroom is looking for, and like that's fine. But then when I was at home and connected, the sort of files and folders panel in Lightroom Classic, I would have my library on the external hard drive where I have everything, but then all of the images that I had imported while I was away were all living on the laptop hard drive. And so I would have to make a point of, every month or so of dragging those over from the laptop hard drive to the external hard drive manually, so that I could free up more space on the laptop for the next time I went and shot a bunch of photos. And it's one of those things. You're like, all right, I'll get to it, and I don't get to it, and then suddenly your hard drive's full, and you're like, how did my hard drive get full? Oh, right, because I forgot to move, 50 gigs of photos back over to the big external storage.
When you were here last time, you were talking about your book, Take Control of Your Digital Photos, and we were talking about some of the challenges of moving our photos around, of organizing them and everything. That's what's striking me here about this conversation so much, that Adobe is really thinking about better ways to make your life easier, to make those processes easier, so that, you may have to set up a few rules, but then they just execute those rules for you. The machine learning thing with the cloud making the adjustments and all. I mean, I'm really impressed by the idea that this is fixing some of those workflows, or giving you potentially a much easier workflow if you want it. It just has to be done Adobe's way, but that's okay, because anybody that's going to author any of these workflows or these solutions, you're going to have to do it their way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ideally, Adobe's approach is, look, everything's going up to the cloud, and therefore then you're done. And in a way, that's totally valid. It's basically them saying, look, don't you worry about where things are stored, because we are putting it all in the cloud, and we are making it available to you whenever you need it by being able to download things. And we're not going to clutter up your hard drive. We'll leave a certain amount free, and that's something that you can specify. And so, like that's the solution right there. Well, some of us are more paranoid than that. And so, yes, it's great to have a copy of your library up in the cloud, but it's still not right here under my direct control. So I also want to be able to have a copy of my entire library here that I can do stuff with. Namely, that makes it possible to make yet another backup of your images, which is another thing that I talk about in both books, because it's great to have everything up in the, I almost said iCloud library. Sorry, up in Creative Cloud. Let's say your computer dies and you don't have any backups because you've never listened to anything that we've talked about here, and everything's gone. You're like, but it's not gone. It's still up in Creative Cloud. Yay, I'm saved. And you buy a new computer and you launch Lightroom CC, and there's your whole library again. That's great. Well, you also then have to re-download all of that, which is kind of a hassle. My preference is, if my computer dies, I want to be able to buy a new computer and be up and running as fast as I can. And so by having my library on an external drive, having all the originals on an external drive, then Lightroom just has immediate access to all those. And by being able to make a backup of that external drive, I can then, for example, make a backup and take it and put it in a safe deposit box, so that if my house burns down, including my laptop and my external drive, I'm not completely hosed, or I'm not having to rely on a cloud copy to be delivered, which I don't have direct control over.
Right.
So, there are degrees.
Yeah, I mean, it can make you crazy, and we end up inevitably the backup word comes up in so many things. But these are precious memories, and we've said it a million times. I think you wake up in the morning and you see floods and hurricanes and fires and tornadoes, and these poor folks, that one of the first things out of their mouths is, I lost all my pictures. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating to me that that's the first thing they think about, but I guess that's their anchor to their past, to so many good times, to precious memories. And yet, I think we talked about this in the last show, that we're not treating them as quite the same way, with quite the same reverence maybe that we should be, until they're gone. And when they're gone, baby, they're gone. They aren't coming back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and they're more brittle, because it's not like you can grab the negatives and make new prints. If your hard drive goes, all your photos are just bits that have been scrambled, and that's it. But just full stop, they're gone. Yeah. So I like that. Even though we've sort of talked about Adobe and their strategy, and how Lightroom CC is, it's a brand new program that's not as full featured as Lightroom Classic, and it's clear that they're going to be adding things to it, just like they added the curves control and the split toning and some of these other features. So like they're clearly gonna build on it, but there's also that undercurrent of by necessity, Adobe has to think like, how are people going to be using photos in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? I think having a cloud solution is very much part of that, because they see Apple and iCloud Photo Library and Google Photos. So many people, especially people who are using like Android handsets, everything just goes to Google Photos, and like that's the solution. So Adobe knows it's going to have sort of a more discerning audience of photographers, even hobbyists or just normal people who care about doing something with their photos, and there has to be that flexibility of having all your photos whenever you want them, wherever you are. Like that's just the reality of the future. I mean, even I would say like 6 years ago, less, you would know that you'd have some photos on your iPhone, maybe synchronized through iTunes, God forbid, or like you'd have some, and then your photo library would live somewhere else. And now it's like, well, why shouldn't I be able to pull up a photo that I took in 2001 because it happens to be on an external hard drive at home that's not connected? Well, that's kind of silly. This is the modern age. I want to be able to access everything all the time, whenever I want. And so this allows that to happen.
You spoiled technology user, you.
I know. I know. What's next? That I should just be able to like talk to a speaker and have it play music for me? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy talk. I want to wrap this up with a question maybe I should have started us out with, and that is
this one I have to research for next time?
No. Happily
Okay.
Not. No, I think you will have an opinion on this.
Okay.
When Adobe has kind of shifted so much of their efforts to, I believe the common average user believes Adobe has shifted so many of its efforts to the professional, because they make sophisticated software. They make very good software, but it's not always for the average person because there's so many learning curves and all, and sophistication, not just for the I guess the implementation, but also the use of it. So where does Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic CC, whatever,
I know,
where does this fit in with? I'm not going to say the average photographer, but I don't know, have a better phrase, or the average person who is out there shooting snapshots. You try to say that, shooting snapshots with their iPhone, and yes, they're obviously creating memories they care about. They want to have archived and all, but they're not making money off of it, and they're not the kind of person that's going to sit down over a weekend and tweak photos just to get that perfect photo. Is Lightroom for them?
Sort of. Actually, I would say Lightroom was for them, but then not quite through everything you said. In the sense that, actually, I think Adobe has always catered to creative professionals. Photoshop is sort of like the big giant elephant of professional software. For so long, people were like, well, if I need to do anything with images, I need Photoshop. And Photoshop was, like there's just so much there. And it's great. Like, Hollywood type stuff, professional retouching, like that's the king of the hill. I think actually with things like Lightroom CC, this is Adobe saying, okay, we have a great group of professional customers, but there are so many more people out there who are not professionals or who are enthusiasts or hobbyists, who they want to be able to do stuff with their photos. They want to do some editing, do some organizing, but maybe they don't want full-blown Photoshop. Maybe they tried Lightroom Classic and it was a little off-putting because it is a professional tool, and there's a lot of it can be overwhelming, especially for somebody who is just like, hey, I like taking photos. I want to do something with them. Everybody told me I need to use Lightroom, and I opened it, and it was just this confusing mess of modules and boxes and all of that. And so I think Lightroom CC fits that crowd. It's for the person who wants to do more than just take snapshots, and be able to have their photos on all different devices. Or for somebody who's already invested in the Adobe ecosystem, and they want, like maybe they're a designer, and they're fine with InDesign and Photoshop, but they want to do something to manage their own personal photos, which may not be work stuff, and so Lightroom Classic is probably overkill for them, but Lightroom CC is perfect because then they can go and do some edits on their iPad in their spare time, that kind of a thing. For the people who are just, I've got an iPhone, I like to take pictures. I think, honestly, Apple, iCloud Photo Library, and Photos, that's the way to go because it's already there. And it's giving you a lot of the same features. It doesn't give you nearly the editing capability, but I think there's a significant portion of that audience that they don't want to be able to apply gradient masks and do some of those things that are sort of one step beyond the basic tools in in photos. So, I don't think Adobe is targeting everybody, but it's definitely, Lightroom CC is definitely geared for somebody who, has had that photo revelation that a lot of us have had, which is like, I liked taking pictures. It was kind of fun. And then you go and do something, you go on a trip, or you buy a new camera, and then you're like, oh, like this whole world opens up, and you're like, oh, well, I could shoot raw photos, and instead of just, having this look a little better, I can make it look a lot better, or I can do HDR, or, that very dangerous slope where suddenly you're like, all I need to do is spend $12,000 on equipment, and, that's a very dangerous slope.
Yeah. And 6 years of your life. Don't forget that part.
Yeah, exactly. So, what it does is, what it does do for Adobe is it opens up more of that market. If I can sort of pretend to sound like a marketer for a moment, I think in a very real way, like they have the pro market already. The Adobe creative tools are, you go to any sort of, professional environment, ad agencies, what have you, Adobe stuff is going to be used there. There are lots of other tools that do, a lot of the same things, but, it's like Microsoft Office. Like, you're going to find Microsoft Office everywhere. And so for the creative side, you're going to find Adobe stuff everywhere. So they don't really need more pro users, because I think pros are going to be naturally drawn to Adobe anyway. But they want the people who, don't really know what to do with their photos, but they want to do something. The enthusiasts who have caught the photo bug, and they want to go beyond, but they don't want to, spend whatever it is, $60 a month for the full Adobe Creative Suite. And, there's a really healthy middle ground that I think that Adobe is going after.
Good. Yeah, it makes me want to go and play with some of this stuff, because I think I waver back and forth, but that I want to spend time with photos, then I get busy and I don't get back to it, and I kick myself because I enjoyed it and I got results that were better than what I had, and We just all need more time, Jeff.
We do. I haven't quite cracked that nut.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we need you to tell us that, okay, if I decide to commit to Lightroom, now you can save me all that time and tell me how to use it. That's what I need.
Yeah. Well, and quite honestly, going back to what we were talking about, like the transition period and the confusion between the different applications, I think the reality now is Lightroom CC. If for people who already use Lightroom, Lightroom CC is a way to sort of kick the tires and see how things are going to be evolving. There are ways, and I should point out in the book, there's a whole chapter about using Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic together. There are ways to do it. Like, you don't have to just go all in and migrate your library to Lightroom CC. There are things that you can do so that, you can take advantage of like the speed and the stripped down quality of Lightroom CC, but then also be able to do things like, merge brackets for HDR images and panoramas in Lightroom Classic. So Lightroom CC, for people who are already using Lightroom, it's something to try out and then maybe think, oh, well, maybe I'll do my next job with this, or maybe I will, do my next vacation and I will do it in Lightroom CC. And if you're using both, it'll all get synced to Lightroom Classic, and so you haven't really lost anything. I think that for a lot of people who don't use any of the Lightrooms, I think some people are just going to kind of wait and see. Like, okay, this is a brand new thing. Let's see what happens as they release further updates, or I don't know. So there's that, and there's also pricing and stuff goes into it. There's a Creative Cloud plan. It's a photographer's plan, where for either like $10 or $20 a month, you get Lightroom and Photoshop. Well, you also get Lightroom CC, so it's there. And so a lot of the people who already subscribe to that, it's not like they have to do anything extra to do Lightroom CC, so they can try it out and use my book to guide them through it and see if that's what they want.
Perfect. So the specifics of this book, as far as costs and upgrades and all that, because this is not a full new version. This is an update to the book.
This is an update to the book. So the book by itself costs $14.99 if you're buying it new. If you already own the previous edition, it's a free update because again, it's going from version 1 to 1.1. And then Take Control is also doing a special where if you buy both this book, Take Control Lightroom CC, and also Take Control of your digital photos, which I just updated and we talked about recently. If you buy them together, you can get them both. So they're both basically $15 books. If you buy them both, it only costs $20. So you could buy one and get the other for $5.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal. If you care anything about photography, and especially if you care anything about Lightroom in any of its flavors, that's a real deal. And we joked the last time, I think, about you helping me get my photos under control. You've definitely helped that, and now you make me want to go and try something new again. So good job. You're sucking up more of my time, Jeff. Thank you.
Great. I'm happy to do it.
Thanks a lot.
No. You are building your knowledge base, and you're growing. Yeah, I'm sucking up all your time.
Jeff will be running for office soon. We'll let you know what office. Jeff, I want to make sure we let folks know where they can find you when you're not here writing Take Control books and talking to me about those Take Control books. Where else is a good place to catch up with you?
So my website, jeffcarlson.com, sort of has links to stuff I'm working on and links to articles that I write. I'm on Twitter at Jeff Carlson. I'm on Facebook, Facebook/Jeff L. Carlson, because some other fellow Jeff Carlson got there first. And you can find me on Flickr as Jeff Carlson, 500px, and Instagram basically at Jeff Carlson.
Great. Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you for the time, but definitely thank you for these books. They're great additions to the Take Control library, great updates, I should say, I guess, to the Take Control library. And I'll look forward to having you back with the next one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. We'll be back with more soon. Until then, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple Tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.